Welcome back to Product Data Weekly. This is a short practical podcast where each week we break down the operational issue that slows down, creates manual work, or quietly limits growth inside product data and e-commerce teams. There's no theory, no hype, just what we actually see happening inside catalogs at scale. I'm Claire, I'm co-founder of SKU Launch and Start With Data, and we've got...
Hi everyone, it's Ben here again. Yeah, lovely to be talking to you again, Claire.
Cool. So today we were going to discuss something about a strategy that we see that people implement when they're doing enrichment projects that often flops. And that is something that on paper sounds like a good commercial decision. You know, go look at your top sellers, go look at, you know, your top performing products and then go and enrich those. But what we actually see is that doesn't work. It doesn't actually change the needle. So do you want to just kind of put some flesh on this problem, Ben?
Yeah. A lot of businesses we talk to, they kind of want to do a mass product data enrichment project. And the problem with these projects is if you've got, 10, 20,000 SKUs, it's impossible to do all of that at once, right? So what you do is you need to do it incrementally. And what we see most businesses do is take a very ad hoc approach to enrichment. And what that means is what they will often do is they will go straight to their top sellers or their highest value products, the highest commercial value products on their website, and they'll start enriching them. That's very easy for people in a business to understand, right? Because it's easy to prioritize. It's a very commercially led discussion. The problem with just going after a list of products in that way, let's say you took your top sellers or your highest commercial value products, is the reality is that customers don't browse a website by a bestseller list, right? They actually browse a website by category. So if you think about a product page, if you're enriching a whole bunch of random products in terms of a commercial value lens, you will be enriching random products, and you'll have good product pages, but the reality is that product sits inside a category page, it has filters, it has facets, it's involved in comparison. So imagine you enrich 6 out of 40 products in a category. You have great data for those 6 products, but what about the other 40? And that means that your filters break, your facets will be incomplete, and basically the navigation will fail. So, in summary, the approach to take needs to be different to just an ad hoc, commercial or top seller approach. So that's just to kind of frame the issue. So if you're not going to take that approach, what approach do you take? Maybe you can talk about that, Claire.
Yeah, so what if you're not going to go by bestsellers, you mean?
If you're not going to pick all your favourite products on your website and enrich them all, how should you be doing this?
Yeah, sure. So what we see works is doing it by category. And the reason for that is it's because that's the way that customers actually shop often. I mean, you will get some people that will land directly on a product page, but most of the customer experience is they go to the website, they filter, they search, and it brings up results. They filter by whatever it is, size, color, brand, price, or whatever the relevant attribute is. And so if you are only doing that for your top sellers, that breaks that whole experience, because your whole category won't be benefiting from all of that enriched attribute details. So this is the problem, is that it breaks the process. It seems like a good idea because you're like, of course we need all of the information on those top sellers, but it's still, you're not then going to get the most out of it. So, but what then happens is if you do complete category data, it means that your filters and facets, they work properly because all of your attributes actually have data. It means that your customers are actually able to narrow from a wide list of products down to what they need to. You've also got, it will actually surface other products that wouldn't be discoverable if if you had only done the top sellers. So then it's that whole, why is it a top seller in the first place? Is it because you've never given it the attention that it needs to be discovered? So there's also that kind of commercial part of it. Comparison. So a lot of people, especially if you're looking at kind of technical products, a lot of, like, comparison is a really important part of that search journey. And if you haven't enriched an entire category, it's impossible to have that experience. And then obviously, as I alluded to before, it's this long tail of the catalog that has never kind of actually done anything. You will actually see an
Mm,
uplift in the long tail.
mm.
So, and so that's kind of what you get out of being able to do a whole category enrichment.
Can I just add? I just wanted to add to that long tail thing as well, because like I've had this discussion with some of our customers. It's like it's chicken and egg, right? If you don't enrich your data for all your products, you don't know whether the products are going to perform better. So the more focus you just put in enriching top sellers, the more it's kind of, it has an inverse effect, right? The long tail still doesn't perform. And then the other thing that I've also heard a lot is they had this whole like gold, silver, bronze standard of content. Again, like that you can get into a vicious circle of that as well. The idea of the difference between having like a gold standard and nothing, so on one category having like six products at a gold standard and the rest at no standard, versus having everything at a bronze standard that at least has like some filterable attributes, makes a hell of a lot more sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing as well when you're looking at category. Sometimes actually patchy data is worse than having like limited or no data, because what it does is the customer kind of thinks, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Like, why is it only showing me 15 results when there should be loads more in this category? What's going on? They might think that there's something wrong with the site, or that you don't range enough products, so they'll go to a different customer. It's that kind of, it creates a
Yeah.
bad experience for the customer. So the yeah, if you're actually getting the whole category, you're building that trust, you're surfacing all of the products that should actually be in there, and hopefully you'll see uh, an uplift across all of your products within that category, not just your top sellers. That's the benefit of this.
Is there an example? I mean, obviously without naming any names and stuff, is there an
Yeah.
example of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, I would say one of our customers were very headstrong a couple of years ago on how they wanted to tackle their enrichment project. So they were very clear. They had, I think, over 200,000 product codes, very little data. They just finished a big e-commerce replatform, and they then suddenly realized we don't have any data. So what they thought the best option was to start with their top 500, then they would move 1,000 by bestseller or whatever the priority was commercially. And we followed this kind of strategy with them, and I think we probably are about 4 months into it, and enriched quite a few thousand SKUs. And when we actually went back and looked at the results, we just weren't really seeing much of the needle just wasn't moving. And that was because they were doing a bit from,
Mm,
let's say they're a building supplier, a bit from plumbing, a bit from tools, a bit from timber. And so their whole categories, it was all very scattered across the site. And so their filters weren't working, the navigation became patchy, and there was just no improvement. So we kind of sat down, looked at this, and we went, okay, we get the commercial strategy. We understand why you want to do it this way, but let's go back, let's rewind, let's go by your category. So we can go by top performing categories, and we can tackle that bit
mm,
first.
mm,
Or we could look at what categories are lacking the most amount of data, and we do it that way. So we then came up with a category strategy, and it literally revolutionized what they were doing. They were seeing, like, I think it's 85% conversion on the categories that had been enriched.
I think that's like the really good point as well, isn't it? Because when you put when you put a kind of ROI lens on like the business case for even doing this in the first place, like the reality is like your leadership and your executive board are probably gonna, they want to see like concrete facts, right? And those facts are not just like linked to page impressions on SEO or GEO. They're linked to like, customer feedback, faceting, filtering, search and merch performance on your website. They're all, they're all contributory KPIs to the business case of doing more of it. So if you do take a category and you look at the KPIs across all of the discovery and metrics, not just, SEO or whatever, you can paint a really good picture for your executive committee. And I mean the ROI, this is one thing I still struggle to comprehend the lack of focus on investment in this product data space, because the ROI is incredible. Like if we have another customer where we took this category approach from the very beginning. They're a SKU launch customer. They just literally broke it down by subcategory. It wasn't even like by top level category. It was like they took the very end nodes, and then they basically broke the enrichment down that way. And it's amazing when you go to a website and you point people to a category that's been enriched, and then you show them the difference between a category that hasn't been enriched. Nobody's going to argue with that. Like, we all use websites. What I always say to customers, we all use shopping websites, right? Yeah, I think I was on one a couple of days ago and getting extremely frustrated by the filtering experience on this website. Because we should probably reach out to them actually. But yeah, so it's that one thing is actually the practicality of doing it for a category, and it's much easier to do that. The other thing is then it's just much easier to paint an ROI picture to your the people with the purse strings, to do more of that stuff. Yeah.
I'll also just add, it's also easier from a like a process actually doing it point of view to do it by category.
Yeah.
Actually, just analyzing something by category, reviewing it, doing all of that is so much easier than chopping and changing, especially if you're dealing with different category managers and what have you. It's a lot easier to do it by that way.
Never really. That is so true. That because often the categories like verticalized against the category managers, aren't they, in the business that are ultimately are responsible for onboarding the data, or at least getting the source data from the suppliers. So yeah. So what to kind of start wrapping things up, Claire? Like what's the overall takeaway really?
Yeah. So I think you should how to kind of approach it is there's a few different ways. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the biggest category. You don't have to prioritize the biggest and the kind of the most problem child category. It can be something where you know that the data gap is actually costing your business sales. So you know that that category needs improvement. It could be a strategically important category. So new season, new range, your highest margin. And then you could also just have a category where you've actually already got all of the data. So it's actually a really easy win to get the ball rolling and show to the business, hey, look at what we've done.
That's a really good point actually about the already having the data. So in the case of the customer I was just alluding to earlier, they actually had most of their data stuck in descriptions. So they didn't even have to go and get the data. They just extracted it all from their descriptions, and all of a sudden they had like a 90% completeness rate on their attribute model.
Yeah, which means you're able to just get going straight away. I think the other kind of the one that we've also seen work in the past is a category where your competitors are not actually, they haven't optimized yet. So you're almost like getting ahead with that competitive advantage. So yeah, that's good.
So basically we're saying stop thinking about product data enrichment at the product level and start thinking about it at the category level. And I really liked this way of thinking about it. A fully enriched category is worth more than 1,000 perfectly enriched products scattered across your catalogue.
Yeah,
very true. I mean, Google might like your enriched product pages, but your customers are not going to be able to not going to be able to filter by anything.
Exactly.
I think we'll probably talk about lots about filters and facets in other sessions and navigations, but people are like so obsessed with the product page. It's like quite rightly, the real estate and all that sort of stuff. But I think a lot of businesses just don't think about that navigational and structuring side of things. You know, SEO, geo, and customers love both, right?
Totally.
Product
That's
page
how
content,
people,
and they love
we've conditioned, yeah, we've conditioned people to
yeah,
use those tools. So when they're
yeah,
not there,
yeah.
it's like glaringly obvious that they can't do that. So yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Great.
great chat.
So yeah, I think look, if you've started an enrichment project and you're not seeing the results that you should have been seeing, it might be worth just taking a look at the way in which you've come at the project and maybe taking a step back, choosing a category and seeing if that works. We've seen it time and time again work for our customers. If you liked this episode, we also have our Product Data Weekly newsletter that comes out every Thursday, and feel free to share this episode with anybody who might be actually doing an enrichment project or about to do an enrichment project. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again next week.
See you next time.
See you.
Bye.